I'd like to thank you for inviting me on the show. It's such an honour to be here, and I'd just like to say that when I'm not playing Xbox with my mate Thor, I really like to listen to my favourite podcast, Pop Culture Pasta. Hey, Doug! Doug! Oh, that's right, Doug's dead.
Pop Culture Pastor. So, Dave, you know me.
I do know you.
I like a good conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
And
who doesn't?
I'm wondering, do you have a favorite celebrity conspiracy theory? Because I do have one.
Now, can you give me an example?
Okay, I'll give you mine.
Oh, you're going to get, because I don't know a celebrity.
Yeah, so my...
I have one.
Oh, okay.
That Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson are related.
I see that one, and I think that one's a good one. Okay, so my celebrity conspiracy theory that I don't believe, but I like to believe, is Stevie Wonder is not blind.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Shaquille O'Neal, famous basketball player, said he walked into a hotel elevator, and Stevie Wonder said, "Hi, Shaq."
Do you think Stevie just messes with people? Because when you don't have one of your senses, the other senses pick up to like a superhuman rate sometimes.
Maybe he has the superhuman rate of smell.
So like he could have heard someone addressing Shaq when he was walking towards the elevator, right?
Potentially. But then there is like an example of him catching a microphone as it's about to fall. But then
he heard it.
There's people that have tried to give him a high five, and he does not do it. So
why would you do that? Why would you do that? He just called to say I love you.
He did.
I love Stevie Wonder. He seemed like he'd be someone good to have a conversation with.
Very superstitious.
Okay, we got a lot of news to get to today. You're listening to Pop Culture Pastor. My name is Dave. Cody's here.
I am.
And we're going to be joined by lots of people later on, so stick around.
Tune in and buckle up.
Yeah, we got a big show. But we got to get to this news because stuff happened today.
Oh.
We're going to have breaking news. But first I want to see, did you hear about Joe Russo? One of the Russo brothers was in the news recently. Did you hear about this?
Joseph?
That's only what his close personal friends call him. But he made a TikTok video this past week, and he did like a duo. Do you know what I mean? If someone duos another TikTok video.
Elaborate.
So they are kind of glomming on to a video that's already out there. So Francesca, who is, I don't know if her last name's Scorsese or not, but Martin Scorsese's daughter, Francesca, made a TikTok video of her father talking to his schnauzer dog named Oscar.
Oh, I see what you did, Marty.
Yeah, Marty. That's cinema. There, Cody. And playfully talking about casting him in a film. And so Joe Russo, who's done Marvel movies, of course, the biggest Marvel movies.
He's the big cheese.
Of whom Scorsese has had some critique that we've talked a lot about. He created his own reel or TikTok video with his own dog, also a schnauzer. And
what? Is this why I'm not a famous director? Because I don't have a schnauzer?
So he's reacting to the video and he's like, oh, look, he's got a schnauzer. I love schnauzer. And his name is Oscar. That's really cute. And then he starts talking to his own dog. He's like, all right, come on, box office.
Oh, Joey.
It was one hilarious because there's something super conceited about naming your pet Oscar. Like, yeah, we all got it, bro. We get it. It is sort of cute, I guess, but it's...
I like to think he had a schnauzer before named Emmy.
I'm gonna name my
Tony.
next animal EGOT. Come here, EGOT. Eminem's got an animal. Name that maybe. But yeah, so he makes this video, and it was clearly a joke. He's being jokey. But like, if Scorsese can do that, if he can name his dog Oscar and everybody can kind of get, like, listen, it's sort of a joke, right? He named his dog Oscar. Then you can sort of understand the joke that Joe Russo's making, because like, hey, when you make a movie that grosses $2 billion plus at the box office, then yeah, make that joke.
Do it.
And especially when he's, Scorsese's been critical of those movies.
He's been a little sassy.
Well, people were quick to criticize Russo. Now, here's the hilarious thing. These artsy fartsy guys, these ones who are like, cinema.
That is me and my friend Marty.
They're so quick to critique. But when someone makes a joke, they just don't get the joke. It's not a joke to them. They're like, how dare you? So some people had thoughts. Here we go. Toonami co-founder and Warner Brothers Discovery senior vice president of action and anime. That's a made-up position.
That's probably the most financially fruitful position at the company.
He went at Russo on his Twitter. He said, Joe Russo took hundreds of millions from Netflix to make whatever he wanted and came up with ... the gray man. That he wrote that in a since deleted tweet. I love when they delete the tweet when it doesn't go how they think it's going to go.
I didn't even know that there was a thing called The Gray Man.
Yeah, it's a movie. Tom Holland's in it.
Oh, it was probably delightful.
So he said Joe Russo took hundreds of millions from Netflix to make whatever he wanted and came up with The Gray Man. Marty got hundreds of millions from Netflix and Apple and made The Irishman and Killers of the Flower Moon. I know which movies people will talk about in 20 years.
I still haven't watched The Irishman.
You watched Killers of the Flower Moon. Would you like to give a 30-second review of it?
Oh, sure. It's very artsy. He does some cool things with the intro and the outro of the movie. It focuses a lot on the white man, and you get some Osage in it.
Yeah.
That's the summary. He could have cut out about 30 minutes to an hour.
Like, look, let me be completely honest here. Do I recognize that Martin Scorsese is good at what he does? Yes. He makes good cinema. I get it. Let me tell you exactly how many Martin Scorsese movies I've repeat watched. That would be 0.
What?
Never, Cody. Never. I've watched lots of Scorsese movies. I've never repeat watched them because I don't feel like it. I have no desire to.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I've watched Endgame like 5 times.
I honestly might watch the Snyder cut of Justice League again before I watch Killers of the Flower Moon again, even though I thought that was a quality film.
Yeah.
It's just lengthy.
This is the problem with so much of this. Is so many of these people are concerned with their legacies. Louis Peitzman, who's a writer, he chimed in and said, in 50 years, no one will know who Joe Russo is.
Well, I mean, in 50 years...
They'll both be dead in 50 years. How about that?
I'm going to assume that he will probably still be in the top 20 highest grossing films of all time.
Right? I mean, Endgame's probably still going to be up there, bro. Especially considering the current plight of the cinema, which I love that Scorsese's all over the comic book movies. If it wasn't for those comic book movies, cinema might well have died in 2020. Like it was those movies that kind of kept theaters going.
And Tom Cruise.
Later.
Which my friend Marty would probably just say it was all Tom Cruise.
Yeah, probably.
Tommy Cruise. Yeah. Anyways. Maverick.
So Scorsese was in my news feeds again. But this time it wasn't him. It was Joe Russo making what I thought was a pretty funny little clapback. And yeah, of course. But then everybody, all the artsy people rushing to Scorsese's defense.
Like, there's only one person or one entity that I would have rushed to their defense, and that would have been Oscar, the Schnauzer.
The Schnauzer.
I am all about dogs, and so if you want to share pictures of your dog who might be named after a famous person or character, go for it. My dog's named after Kylo Ren. His name's Kylo.
Joe Russo's dog is named Box Office, according to his recent reel. All right. Let's move on to some other news. This was huge today.
Uh-oh.
So this dropped today, and it was like, so I watched several videos throughout my day as I'm doing work in my office. And the live videos, I was in the middle of a live video of someone, a geeky channel, and this dropped, and they just stopped everything they were going to talk about and started talking about this. So this big bomb article dropped today from Variety, all on Marvel.
What?
Yeah. The headline says, Crisis at Marvel. Jonathan Majors' backup plans, the Marvels reshoots, reviving original Avengers, and more issues revealed. So basically, this article paints a picture of Marvel being in big trouble, which, yeah, okay. But it starts off like this. If I can read a little bit to you, this is courtesy of Variety. This past September, a group of Marvel creatives, including studio chief Kevin Feige, assembled in Palm Springs for the studio's annual retreat. First of all, how come we don't get retreats? We should get a retreat. What's going on with our jobs, man?
Our retreat is called comic conventions.
Most years, the vibe would have been confident, even cocky, given how the premier superhero brand owned by Disney since 2009 has remade the entertainment business in its image. But this occasion was angst-ridden. Everyone at Marvel was reeling from a series of disappointments on screen, a legal scandal involving one of its biggest stars, and questions about the viability of the studio's ambitious strategy to extend the brand beyond movies into streaming. The most pressing issue to be discussed at the retreat was what to do about Jonathan Majors, the actor who had been poised to carry the next phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but is instead headed to a high-profile trial in New York later this month on domestic violence charges. The actor insists he is the victim, but the damage to his reputation and the chance he could lose the case has forced Marvel to reconsider its plans to center the next phase of its interlocking slate of sequels, spin-offs, and series around Major's villainous character Kang the Conqueror.
Okay.
You following so far?
I am.
At that gathering in Palm Springs, executives discussed backup plans, including pivoting to another comic book adversary like Doctor Doom. What do you think about that?
I think it's smoke and mirrors.
You think it's smoking? You don't think they're actually? I mean, this says this source. They have a source, and they said they're seriously considering.
I think that they are seriously considering, but I think the reason it is dropping right now is smoke and mirrors.
Okay, so you think Marvel's behind this story a little bit?
Yes, because
explain that. What do you think their motivation is?
So, Culture Crave. The Marvels is receiving middling reviews in public testing.
Yeah, that's in this article.
Also, director Nia DaCosta moved away to start working on her next film just while post-production was still happening.
Dude, what's up with that? Dude, the Marvel sounds like a mess, bro.
Like, you don't move on from your $250 million movie. I think they are trying to distract you from the headline of Kang out, ? Doctor Doom in, and then you get all the comic book geeky people talking about, well, I'm much more of a Doctor Doom kind of guy myself.
So let me tell you that there's a quote in here. It's a source, but they quote him as a top deal maker who has, I don't even know what that means.
Tom Cruise.
It's Tom Cruise, who has seen the final Loki episode. So that's interesting. He says this: Marvel is truly expletive. We'll say screwed because it's a nicer way to say it, I suppose. Marvel's truly that with the whole Kang angle, says one top deal maker who's seen the final Loki episode. And they haven't had an opportunity to rewrite until very recently because of the strike. But I don't see a path to how they move forward with him. So that's ominous. Now, they're like, okay, so when he was arrested in March, Disney executives insisted that they could afford to play a wait and see kind of game, given that Avengers: The Kang Dynasty wasn't expected to begin shooting until early 2024. But then Majors was dropped very quickly by his publicist and his manager. He remains a client at something called WME, which is the agency where he landed after CAA parted ways with him. Did you know that they parted ways with him? They've since said for his, quote, brutal conduct towards staff.
Ooh.
That's from a source. CAA declined to comment for this article. But in April, other alleged domestic violence victims of Majors began cooperating with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Then, ahead of a key hearing in October, media outlets, including Variety, obtained a court filing that referenced a police incident in London involving Majors that led his ex-girlfriend to seek medical attention. Making matters even stickier, the ex-girlfriend also worked on Quantum Mania as a movement coach, and the London incident took place while Majors was shooting season 2 of Loki. Now, this is where it gets really interesting because last week we talked on the pod how there had been some maybe good news for him that looked like the girlfriend in question was going to get charged herself. That has since gone away. The DA said, no, we're not charging her. So the DA said, nah. So that's gone. That's not a thing anymore. How quickly things can change in a week.
So I don't want to be rude, but I do think that a lot of the online news sites and influencers are trying to create a story
Maybe
where there probably isn't much of one. I mean, we kind of got this with Jason Sudeikis, Olivia Wilde, and Harry Styles.
Oh, there was definitely a story there.
There's a story, but like there was 15 different versions of it, and so some of that had to be garbage.
I believe only the ones where Olivia Wilde looked the worst. Is that wrong?
Yes.
I shouldn't say that. That's
she might
mean.
be a delightful person.
Probably she isn't, but
I don't know. 13 from House seemed like a nice person.
I'm sorry, Jesus.
And I mean, we got to see this all play out with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. No matter what you think of the outcome,
right.
Both were painted very ugly at various times, and I don't think any of them are particularly clean afterwards.
Yeah, well, let's just be honest. Let's, from a pastor standpoint, everybody's broken. Like when you're looking at a situation like this and you're thinking the good guy and the bad guy, how about you switch that kind of framework and thinking and just the broken and the broken? That none of us are perfect. None of us are doing everything right, making all the right decisions. And that's probably where you should start from when analyzing these situations. But as we move on in this story, things are looking, as it pertains to Marvel and Jonathan Majors being Kang, things get worse. On October 25th, so, within the last week or so, a New York judge denied Majors' motion to dismiss the case, which ensures that the actor will stand trial in late November. His legal team is attempting to keep some material in the case sealed. I'm going to say that again. His legal team is attempting to keep some material in the case sealed. Well, why would they do that, Cody?
Well, I can tell you a few reasons.
Oh, no.
I'm just saying, maybe there is something from his past that might have been a one-time thing. Maybe there's something that, might seem like it's relevant, but really is not relevant to the thing that happened back in April or whenever it was that it all went down. Mm-hmm. But then there are some things that clearly would be connected and clearly would show a pattern of behavior, which would not bode well for Mr. Majors. So I am amongst those innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. I don't have an opinion on if he is innocent or guilty. I just feel bad for anyone that suffered abuse in this potential situation.
Absolutely. And so this article, though, is putting it in the frame of Marvel. So you're in charge of making movies. You've put a large bet on the table up on this guy and on the stories being told. Like, you've been working this direction and now this. And so you can see why the discussion comes up, like, is there a way we can pivot to the story to a different villain? Now, so all that's going on. More things come out in this article, though. We talked about the Marvels and how it's looking. Marvel's been bleeding money anyways. A single episode of She-Hulk cost $25 million, which dwarfs the budget of the final season episodes of HBO's Game of Thrones, which had buku viewers.
That tells you how Warner Brothers, HBO were being cheapskates.
No, and they were spending plenty of money on it.
Well, they clearly didn't spend money that last season.
Oh, well, no, they spent
Starbucks,
money.
Coffee mug scene.
They were spending money. They just were doing terrible writing.
And then, like, how Disney's just like, here's all the money. Let's throw it and see if some of it sticks.
Let's talk about Blade, the Blade reboot. This is beyond. I can't even believe this when I read it. Mahershala Ali signed on for the role of the vampire. Things look promising for a 2023 release date. But the project has gone through at least 5 writers, 2 directors, and 1 shutdown 6 weeks before production. One person familiar with the script permutations says the story at one point morphed into a narrative led by women and filled with life lessons.
That's not what Blade's about. Like,
oh, what are they doing?
I get that you want to have some deeper themes, but sometimes you just let an action movie be an action movie, and that's what Blade should be. Is like, oh, I'm a daywalker. I can kill some vamps.
Like, are there women characters in the Blade story?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
Plenty.
But to be led by these women in that story is kind of weird. They said in this version of the script that Blade himself was relegated to the 4th lead.
Nope.
How do you even call that movie Blade at that point?
Like, I get that you might be trying to do an origins movie and maybe he doesn't appear till like the last part, but still, like, no, you can't do that with Blade. Just start in with Blade, or you know what? A modest proposal. Bring back old Wes Snipes.
But you don't have to do that. Let's start from the beginning. Mahershala Ali, 2-time Oscar winner. Mahershala Ali fell in their lap. He wanted to do Blade. And your answer to that is, hey, let's make him the 4th lead. That is beyond incompetence.
So I would love to blame Kathleen Kennedy, but she doesn't have anything to do with this franchise.
It sounds like her, doesn't it? Like, I'm sorry. It sounds like something Star Wars would do. It's that ridiculous.
And that's why Disney can't be hemorrhaging all this money, because of Star Wars and Indy.
Sources say they have been in talks to bring back the original gang for an Avengers movie. This would include reviving Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man and Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow, both of whom were killed off in Endgame. Which is what they're heading for a soft reboot. That's definitely going to happen.
Don't do it.
That's what's going to happen.
Well, I mean, the reboot thing has to happen, but you don't need to bring back the whole gang. Literally, let Chris Evans be an old man somewhere. Let Scarlett Johansson be dead. Let Robert Downey Jr. be dead. We don't even need Gwyneth Paltrow to come back.
No one needs that.
Like Thor, Loki, and whoever's left in Wakanda. let's just have that gang like be there when we have the multiverse collapsing, and then boom, we got a new gang.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all of it's kind of nutty. It's kind of wild. Let's talk about Matthew Perry for a second.
Rest in peace.
Yeah. People were struggling with this.
It was weird to me.
Why was it weird? Because you're not old enough.
Oh, no, I'm old enough. I watched the series as it's happening.
Okay.
I seen the final episode live when it aired. So like,
why is it weird to you?
tell me what he done post.
Post Friends? Well, it doesn't matter.
Oh, that's my
nobody
point.
remembers him as anything but Chandler Bing.
Oh, I'm just saying, like, the thing is, when we have like these deep visceral reactions, if I told you that Kelsey Grammer had passed away, people would be like, oh no, Frasier.
Yeah.
No one's going to be mourning that.
It's interesting because I think he's the one of the Friends that endeared himself in a way that maybe would lead to the reaction, because he's like, of the Friends, he's like the one who has most of life put upon him, right? Mm-hmm. He's got the terrible parents. All the other friends, they have good, loving parents. It's not that his parents didn't love him, but that, like, you know, his dad's a lead of a burlesque show in Vegas. You know, like, they're divorced, and it's just one of those things. So, you know, I don't know. We could get into. I don't really want to get into that. I do want to talk about some of the things he wrote in his book.
Okay.
Recently, he said this quote: I had a lot of ups and downs in my life. I'm still working through it personally. But the best thing about me is that if an alcoholic or drug addict comes up to me and says, will you help me? I will always say, yes, I know how to do that. I will do that for you, even if I can't always do it for myself. So I do that whenever I can, in groups or one-on-one. And I created the Perry House in Malibu, a sober living facility for men. I also wrote my play, The End of Longing, which is a personal message to the world, an exaggerated form of me as a drunk. I had something important to say to people like me and to people who love people like me. When I die, I know people will talk about friends, friends, friends. And I'm glad of that. Happy I've done some solid work as an actor, as well as given people multiple chances to make fun of my struggles on the World Wide Web. But when I die, as far as my so-called accomplishments go, it would be nice if Friends was listed far behind the things I did to try to help other people. I know it won't happen, but it would be nice. Now, I want you to balance that with the importance of legacy for some other people we talked about earlier, like Martin Scorsese. And why I think I see why people are sad, but also, can we get the good things of the real legacy we can leave behind that Matthew Perry did leave behind with his own words?
So, like, I knew that he had done a lot of this stuff, but that's not what you see online. That's not what people are talking about. Where it's weird, the things that we uplift.
Yeah.
Versus what should be uplifted. And so, like, when I said it was weird, yeah, I find it weird from the celebrity perspective that, like, out of all the people who have passed away in the past couple of years, that this has an intense reaction. But it wouldn't be weird if the intense reaction was met with, he did all these things to try to help others who had gone through similar situations that he had. That would match, but we don't get that. And so we get friends, 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 friends.
Yeah. Well, because that's where people remember him from. But I will say, much of this I didn't know about him. And in his death, all this stuff is coming out. Not only that, but including this, I didn't know this about him. Did you know he went through 14 stints of rehab, 15 stomach surgeries, dozens of attempts at detox. In his autobiography, he revealed that at his lowest point, he turned to God in desperation. He says this, quote, God, please help me. Show me that you're here. And following that prayer, he described having an encounter with the presence of God, which caused him to weep uncontrollably. And he said, quote, I wasn't crying because I was sad. I was crying because for the first time in my life, I felt okay. I felt safe, taken care of. He saved me that day and for all days, no matter what. I had been in the presence of God. I was certain of it. In a 2022 interview with Diane Sawyer, he recalled the first time he prayed to God, but that it was shallow and he wasn't proud of it. During his first prayer, Perry said anything could be done to him so long as he became famous. He prayed to be famous. This was before he had that Friends money. Mm-hmm. And he looked back at it as a dumb prayer, like a prayer of a really young person. He believed that fame would cure his addiction, but later realized it only worsened it, which, man, hold on to that lesson. So many times we think, oh, if I could just do this, if I can attain this, if I can make this money, if I can be this person, then all my problems will be fixed. And here again is someone else who did that saying, no, it made it worse because that couldn't fill that emptiness. And I want to hit on that real quickly before we move on to other things here, that here's a guy who's telling you with his own words that there was some truth to this life. And that all the money and the fame that he had, I mean, like, look, he was taken care of for life. He had all the money. They were making $1 million an episode on the last couple seasons of that show, right?
Big money.
Yeah. He says this, I'll leave you with this quote. This time I had prayed for the right thing, help. God had shown me a sliver of what life could be. He saved me that day and for all days, no matter what. He had turned me into a seeker, not only of sobriety and truth, but also of him. So that's good stuff, man. That's good stuff. And like, I think intrinsically we all know that there's a truth out there that we know in deep down inside. And then a lot of the other stuff we concern ourselves with is just us kind of fooling ourselves. But I just wanted to talk about that a little bit before we move on.
Good stuff.
We have a guest. You ready for this, Cody?
I am ready.
We are going to talk to someone. His name is Pat Fraley, voice actor Pat Fraley.
Famous guest.
Yeah. Did all the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle voices. Not all of them, but he was Krang and some other voices. But in order to do that, we got to go to the Geek Phone. Cody, are you ready?
I am ready.
To the Geek Phone!
The Geek Phone, sponsored by Insert Sponsor.
All right, we're here on the Geek Phone on Pop Culture Pastor with Pat Fraley. Now, Pat, it says that you've done voices Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Tailspin.
I certainly have.
Love it.
That's amazing. You've done G.I. Joe, Bobby's World, Buzz. You've even been Buzz Lightyear.
Well, yeah, when Tim Allen was too busy, I did Buzz Lightyear for about 9 years.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I did all the toys and stuff like that. And he didn't have time because he was doing, he had a TV show and I did a few things, but it wasn't a marriage made in heaven, but I did my best.
Yeah. Yeah. Now we've got Geek Scotty with us, and Geek Scotty, Pat, here's what you need to know about Scotty. Scotty, so we have geeks that have different specialties in our, we call them geeks of the round table here at our podcast. Scotty knows everything about comic books and like cartoons associated with them and things like that. And thus, man, he knows a lot about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and a bunch of other stuff you've been a part of. So yeah. I'm gonna let Scotty kind of take over for some of the questioning here, and Cody and I will pop in.
Okay, Dave, anything you want to pop in on Scotty, go right ahead. It's okay.
Okay. All right. Scotty?
Okay, let's start about your early career. How did you get into voice acting?
I was 4 years old. Honestly, I was playing GI or soldiers with guys, and they liked to shoot me because I died really well. And so they'd come and go, yeah, how do you do that? Okay, here's what you do. You arch your back, you drool a little and go, Achban Himmel, or something like that. I was teaching and performing. God gave me a gift and a passion for both from the get-go. There was no choice. It was God's choice.
Yeah, I like hearing. I like focusing on that kind of stuff, as you might have guessed, because we're pastors. Cody and I are, and we talk about that a lot. About that, God. There's a piece of the Bible that says God will give you the desires of your heart, and a lot of people.
Yes, beyond genes. I mean, I was always exaggerated. And I thought, oh, that's my mom. She grew up in and around at deaf schools because my grandfather taught the deaf all his life. So she was very exaggerated, hence I was. But later on, I realized that God had a plan and he orchestrates everything. Yeah, he uses genes, but it's not the end be all and end all.
Yeah. So he gave you these talents. He gave you the surroundings that shaped you into this person. And then he opened the doors for you to be into this world. And it's something you love doing.
Yeah, my dad had a work ethic. My mom was exaggerated and funny. I really didn't have a say-so in it. Yeah. God is so gracious. I mean, 14 years ago today, I lost my firstborn son. He died. And it was a tough day. I was talking to Renee. She's up in Idaho with one of my other boys. And guess what? God gave me another boy, my third boy, Henry, who was having a little problem. So Renee and I took care of that. That's the way God works. You want patience? Don't pray for it. You'll get it. But God gives it to us a different way than we expect.
That's good.
Yes.
That's good. Scotty, what's your next question?
Did you have some voice idols growing up?
No, well, I did, but I passed on the show. They said, well, who are your famous people? Well, Ruth Draper, who was a monologist on Broadway, and Charles Lawton, who was an actor and did wonderful voices, but nothing to do with comedy. Nothing to do with what I ended up doing, which were cartoon voices. Oh, I did everything, but I think I'm a living legend because of comics and comedy. I did hundreds of cartoon shows.
How did those early jobs come about for you? It says here you did a Scooby-Doo Goes Hollywood.
Yes.
Of course, G.I. Joe. Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling.
Yes, I was here, Billy Jim. I never actually saw a show, but I did my hick and I got cast. Brad Garrett, Charlie Adler, Ron Feinberg, my mentor. Oh, the cast was huge. They went well, and I was discovered, believe this or not, on vacation in Tahiti. There was a producer from Hanna-Barbera, Don Jurich, and I probably did too many parlants. And he said, look, if you come to LA, I'll audition, okay? Well, I did. And he said, well, if you were here, I'd audition you. Well, I called Renee, who was my girlfriend at the time. I said, we made it. Within, I think, 3 weeks, we were in LA from Seattle. And later on, I got Scooby-Doo Villains. I got Scooby-Doo Goes Hollywood. These jobs. And later on, I asked, and when I got a regular after 3 years of doing this, I asked him, why'd you hire me? And he goes, well, I felt guilty because you brought this beautiful young wife down. And I thought to myself, well, guilt worked for me. That's good. And also, I brought cash. I had about 10 grand, which is how much these days? This is late 70s, about what, 50?
I got 4 kids. That wouldn't last us the week.
Oh, yeah, seriously. You can't eat under $20 per person. Hello. But anyway, I had money. So these guys would go, hey, Fraley, why don't we have a lunch? Because they were working morning and afternoon. And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? I didn't have to wait tables. I had some money. And Renee was working at that time. Well, I got a reputation for being a young, 30 years old, working actor. I wasn't working, but they didn't know.
That's kind of wild that you got discovered. Like you kind of found that while you were on vacation. You just assume that people like, well, they went to school and then they, did the rounds and worked their way up. But you kind of just made it happen in Tahiti.
Well, here's the thing. Wait, hold on now. Who's the comedian that did? Excuse me. What's that guy's name? He's a famous guy. Did movies and he did King Tut and
Steve Martin.
Steve Martin, yeah. He said people would ask me how you make it, and they expected me to say, "Well, you get an agent, you know what an agent is, then you get a manager, but I never did, and no one ever took my advice. Here's my advice, and to this day, get really good. Then they'll come after you or somebody like you. It's easier then. And that's what I believe in. I arrived at 30 with a Master of Fine Arts from Cornell in acting. I'd done 50 plays. I knew what I was doing. I had done not cartoon voices, but character voices on commercials in Australia, where I emigrated to work. And I was ready. And I was good at what I did. And that's a reason why I got work, because they went for me.
So you mentioned that you kind of classically trained. Then you did plays and you did all that. Was there ever any disappointment of like doing the cartoons, or did you just roll with it? Did you just kind of go with that?
I was in Australia, and I think a producer said, "Oh, we like you, mate." And I said, "Why?" I said, "Oh, you're so big. We can't get the other actors to be that big." Well, big. I always thought, oh, I never got the director's note, more, Pat. Give me more. It was always less, Pat. Less. Because I was great at French farce and in some place, but when it was Chekhov, the pilot light went out. So I thought, well, that's what I should do. I don't care. I want to be a performer. What do they need? Exaggerated characterization. Cartoons. And within 2 years, I was up in Seattle and down in LA at Hanna-Barbera doing cartoon voices. I never had a desire to do it, but I had a desire to perform.
Yeah. Scotty, do you want to talk about TMNT?
For sure. So let's move on to Teenage Mutant Turtle. You did 65 different voices, including Crane, Casey Jones, Baxter Stockman, Vern Thompson, and Vernon Fenwick, just to name a few.
Yeah, but I turned down Vernon. By the way, I was recast, and I took the role of the director. I'm trying to think of his name. He's dead now. But he cast himself in 4 roles on a Saturday, where Fred Wolf was, shall we say, he was a producer. He was frugal. Reed got irritated that the director did that, and he cast me to replace him. And I said, well, I can't do Vernon Fenwick. That's 4. I can do 3. Well, it turns out it was he done by Pete Renaday, who did Vernon. So funny. He was the one guy we all laughed at during the sessions. And so I did a lot of characters. And the reason why we did so many, and Rocksteady and Bebop were Barry Gordon and Cam Clark, my cousin, and was because Fred never had guests until late. He was very frugal. So we got an education. I mean, it's sort of like I was like Denny's, I did 65,000 characters. Well, I went to Denny's. I've had several pancakes, all bad. So apparently doing a lot of work makes you sound good, but let's see the work, okay? And I did a lot, and I learned a lot.
How do you come up with your different voices? So you're doing several different voices on one show. Are you motivated? Are you inspired by like when you read the scripts, or how does that work for you?
Well, inspired. Heck, you arrive at the session, they give you one sheet design of the character like Slash. And you look at it and go, what do you want? Well, he's crazy. And he had split out teeth. So I thought, I'll do Kirk Douglas. He's kind of crazy. and I'll splay out the teeth and slash the turtle. Or they gave me a picture of Casey Jones. And I said, what do I do? And they went, give me a young Clint Eastwood. Hello, Violator. That's all I did. Oh, there's some that I bring in, a character that I developed at home. And really, it's really good management. I learned from Mel Blanc and Dawes Butler and some of the luminaries of voiceover work, Michael Bell. And it's more like Michael Bell says, it's more like Mr. Potato Head. You pull off that nose and put on another. But when it came down to working fast, you throw it against the wall. It's the school of linguini as acting. Anything sticks is good.
Yeah. So you've done all these things like Hanna-Barbera, which at the time was big for animation. Did you think while you were doing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that it would have the staying power that it's had?
Well, yes, in a way. They did everything in those days. This was the late 70s, early 80s. Filmation did a little. Ruby Spears would go outside and stuff, but they were the number one. Then Ted Turner bought it, and then Warner Brothers bought Ted Turner. So it went the way of the weenie, as they say. But I had other animators that would hire me that had worked at Hanna-Barbera, like Ruby Spears, and Filmation had not worked at Hanna-Barbera, but it was their own company, so I worked with them. So after I got going, I got known to be able to deliver the goods, and I was in my 30s.
So what are some of your favorite memories of voice acting? Is there like certain people that you love to voice act with?
Well, Jim Cummings, pardon me, is probably the greatest voiceover guy ever. I work with Mel Blanc. I work with Dawes Butler. Dawes Butler, by the way, was the best voiceover actor ever. Mel Blanc was the most dynamic ever. But I work with Charlie Adler, and I work with a lot of people, and I enjoyed working with them. And Jim Cummings could do what? He could do Peg Leg Pete and then switch over to Winnie the Pooh. I mean, what a range. And he could sing like a bird, like Rob Paulson could. So my three fondest memories are of shows. And if we have time, I'll tell you real fast. Huckleberry Finn, The Adventures, in the audiobook, had 91 characters and 35 dialects. I loved doing that. Who else could do that? I did it at the peak of my career, and I could deliver the goods. So best criticisms. Then I did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for 9 years. That was money. It was like huge money. Then Tailspin from Disney. And I played Wildcat, the lovable sidekick to Baloo. It was sort of like, Baloo is just a ranch of banana. I forgot. Oh, look, there's a new island on the map. No, that's guacamole. But they had a hard time casting it, so I played naive. Little did I know I was modeling after some deaf students, because if you hear deaf people talk sometimes without tone, it was sort of like Wildcat.
Wow.
If Disney knew that, they would never have cast me. But about 20 years after the show, I got a call from a psychologist in New York that said, "Will you take a call from a student? She's autistic." And that's when they didn't use spectrum, Asperger's. She just said she's autistic. I went, yeah. Well, she's very, very on the spectrum. And it turned out that she'd go to public schools on the bus, and that because they had resources for people with autism. And she'd be humiliated all day, and come home and watch Tailspin. And she would see who she thought was I'm trying to think of the right term. A character that was not right in the head,
Okay. She thought the character was a character that had like special needs?
Yes. Well, I can't think of the term, and everyone in the cast loved that character.
Wow.
And so she really identified. Now that's when my job as an amusement person amuse, coming from Greek meaning not think, to something of value. And that really struck me.
Yeah, it's really cool when you get to be a part of this pop culture that we're involved in, that we love so much. But when you see what it means to people.
Well, it means very little to me. As my pastor tells me, hold the world loosely. I look toward where my home is, and that's heaven. But there are aspects of this world, and many, many, many actors are not Christians, and they think it's wonderful and amusement is great. But if you remember Bob Hope, he was never funny to me, but he was always at war. Well, in World War II, he did a routine for a bunch of kids like 18, 19, in Tarawa, before Tarawa, and made them laugh. The next day, they were all dead. 15,000 of them. You talk about putting meaning in your life. There it is.
Yeah. We like to say life's about moments, and that we don't want the moments to get away thinking about too much down the line. Right. And that Bob Hope story really resonates that way.
Right. Well, I would say life's about being obedient and honoring God, because I'm a Christian. And my life was of little meaning until I committed to Christianity.
Yeah.
That's really the truth on my part.
Wow. Yeah. So it says here you were in The Fisher King?
Yeah. Very funny story. Stephen Bridgewater, my writing partner, put on a white shirt with epaulets on it and brought in his script and saw Terry Gilliam. Didn't Terry Gilliam directed?
Yep.
Yeah. And he goes, yeah, thank you. And he goes, oh, I'm not from FedEx. It's my script. And he was so impressed by Stephen that somehow I got hired to do voices off camera before the initial shooting to make Jeff Bridges meaner, because he was too nice a guy. So I would be in the other room. I was playing Blind Lemon William. And he, well, how long have you been on the streets, Blind? Like he's my best buddy. I said, well, about 2 weeks. How much do you make? And he said, well, that's none of your effing business. And I said, well, you seem to be very comfortable with my poverty. Oh, and he went off his nut. And the director said, you can't say that on there. And you can't hang up on him. You got to keep him on. And I trained him. And Terry Gilliam used my improv with a couple characters in the movie. And that's why I got the credit.
Wow.
And money.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And got to know Jeff Bridges, who was very funny. I got to tell you a fast story. One of his first movies, and I'd forgotten this, was Fat City with Stacy Keach Jr., where he plays a down and out boxer. And we were making fun of John Huston, going, never mind the metaphors, mix the martinis, and just making fun. And he said, the only direction I ever got from that guy, and I forgot this, but I remember it later. I said, no, what? Well, John Huston would say, give me more, Jeff. Give me more.
Wait, what does that even mean?
Yeah, really. Well, he had the key. He told Katharine Hepburn when she said, why do I play this role in the African Queen? And he said, well, think of Grand Dame. And she said, well, I instantly thought of Eleanor Roosevelt, and that was all I needed.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You switch into voices so quickly. I find myself, I have to start my brain's computing like, oh, he's doing Hepburn. That's amazing.
Yeah, what you have to have is a really important key element, not being that bright. I've got that in spades.
Well, okay. So you say you're not that bright, but you're a teacher. You teach.
Yeah, I teach. I guide. In other words, I say, do what I do. And I leave directing to a director. I'm a horrible director. And directors will say, yeah, next, do it on the moon. I have no idea what that means. But I guide people. I say, no, if you're a villain, usually you say villainous things and do villainous things. Play against it. Be as nice as you can. That's guidance.
Mhm.
And that's what I do. I've done that all my whole career, and I do a lot of it now because I'm 74. I'm too old. When I was like young, they'd bring in some guy that was 60, and I go, "What's that old guy doing in here?" Well, that's the way it is. That's life. But I teach so much now from patfraley.com. Everything I have is there.
Yeah. I don't want to keep you too long here, Pat. So I'm going to start kind of wrapping up, but I have a couple more things. First of all, I'd like you to give you opportunity to tell people what you have going on. How can people keep up with what you're doing? You just mentioned your website.
Yeah, that's it. If they go to contacts, they'll find my own email number and my own cell phone number. Email's faster. And go ahead, email me with questions or anything you want. And also on that, I have free lessons, about 50 of them. I also have everything I teach, which is like home study courses. I only need to hear them. I don't need to see them. And they can choose what they need or want and enroll. So that's it, patfraley.com.
Okay, one more thing.
That's what I'm doing a lot of these times, Dave.
One more thing before we let you go. I was wondering if you could do us a favor.
Sure.
And if you could pretend to be a celebrity of your choice and say that you should listen to your favorite podcast, Pop Culture Pastor.
Oh, you Pop Culture Pastor. Hello, this is Lord Graham. I want to tell you to listen to Pop Culture Pastor, whatever that is. Krang. Ow.
That's perfect.
Nailed it.
Well, Pat, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on the show. You are, this is Scotty's words, not mine. So I'm going to give him credit for this, but you're the voice of a lot of childhoods.
Yes. And I'm grateful for the opportunity. And I remember going into Hanna-Barbera and hearing the voices, the same actors and voices that I grew up with as a boy in 1958 and 59 when I was 9 and 10 years old. They were there. And it was surprising because, you see, if I walked up or you walked up to Brad Pitt, we'd be a little reluctant. But people kind of own us like puppets. They'll hug me because they own me partially. I'm grateful for that.
Well, we're grateful for you, Pat, and how you've been allowed by God to use your gifts and to be a part of people's lives. And we're just thankful for you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
So am I. I'm God. God is gracious and God is good.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yep. We'll leave
Through
it at
Christ. That's where I came to him.
Thanks, Pat. We loved having you on. All right, Cody, that was fun, huh? We got to talk to a real life
Celebrity.
I
was almost rubbing elbows with him, but it was over the phone, so you can't really rub elbows.
He's been in the same room with Jeff Bridges,
which is amazing. I wasn't expecting that, to be honest.
That was fantastic.
Like, I assumed maybe Jim Cummings.
Yeah.
Because, like, Jim's been in everything, and Pat's been in a lot of things, but Jeff Bridges, the dude.
Pat was amazing. What an amazing guy. And I feel like we could have monopolized his time. He'd have just kept talking to us. So what a great dude for coming on. And
I love storytellers, people that are willing to share their experiences, their testimonies. Like, that's the thing that makes us connect better is the sharing of the story.
Yeah, definitely. So we went to Eric. I'm not to. That was a terrible segue, but
we're going to share the story about us going to Air Capital Comic Con.
We went to Air Capital Comic Con in Wichita this past weekend, and we just thought we would talk a little bit about it because if you don't know, if you're just listening to this podcast, one of the things we really love to do with this podcast is we like to use it to go create community. That's why we want you to follow the Facebook page, join the Facebook group, the Pop Culture Pastor community group, because it's not enough for us for you to just listen to the pod. If we were just wanting listeners, I mean, we would do outrageous things. mostly we just want to be in community with you. And that's why we do what we do.
And share the stories.
Yeah, definitely. We love stories here at Pop Culture Pastor. And so we went to a Comic-Con where all we want to do is like connect with people and learn their stories and hang out with them. And we just wanted to kind of report like the times we had and some stories from Comic-Con this past weekend in Wichita. Air Capital Comic-Con. Thank you to them for, hosting the whole thing.
Yeah. Very nice.
First, we talked to a guy, and I got to talk about this. ICP is Christian? Were you aware of this?
Okay, so my wife
Set it up for us.
she has been a juggalo, evidently, for years.
He is a juggalo.
And I knew this about her, and she has been telling me, Cody, they get a bad rap. They're great people. And I'm like, I know like 2 songs and have seen them in their makeup, and sometimes they scare me. But then this weekend, we ran into a gentleman who was like, have you read or listened to their lyrics? And
yeah, it's not every day that when people find out we're pastors, they immediately be like, do you listen to Insane Clown Posse?
yeah, that's not what happens typically. But because of this, my wife and I had a much deeper conversation about the clowns.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me give you my experience with Insane Clown Posse. My experience involves, I kind of enjoyed them when they were wrestlers. That for a time they did the pro wrestling. They were on WCW in the late 90s, and I enjoyed that. The Juggalo Nation on there. Also, I went to an Insane Clown Posse concert once in Lawrence with my friend Derek, who we lovingly called Debo. I was the only person in line who didn't have his face painted. I felt wildly out of place. And then in the concert, I almost got hit in the face with a 2-liter bottle of Faygo, which is a thing. They like empty these 2-liter bottles. They bring out this big like trailer full of Faygo 2-liter Faygo sodas.
I don't even know what that is.
It's sort of like the upper Midwest version of Fanta, it's or Shasta. It's like their generic soda of choice.
Okay.
And they're just like squeezing it out and dumping it on everyone. And then at one point, I think it was Violent J.
Oh.
It was not Shaggy 2 Dope. It was Violent J. I think he was like pouring one out, but then he just got tired of waiting, and it was like half full, and he like drop kicked it. And there was a strobe light going in, and I noticed that each time the strobe light kicked on, it was getting closer and closer, and I just barely got out of the way. I almost got a concussion. So
Thank goodness.
That's sort of my experience with the Insane Clown Posse. So it was wild when this dude was like, oh, you guys are Christian. You guys are pastors. Have you listened to Insane Clown Posse? And I'm like, no, why would I? I've only heard bad things about ICP.
This pastor's wife does.
Yeah. Well, apparently they've gone like, holy.
So my wife went into grave detail about the charitable work they've done, the Make-A-Wish Foundation events they've done, and how they have several songs that point to a faith life.
That's crazy. It wasn't that long ago when Juggalos were on like the Department of Homeland Security's like internal terrorist group list.
And I didn't blame the Department of Security back then. But now I'm like, how dare you?
Their logo's literally a dude with crazy hair running around with 2 hatchets. You don't run full speed with hatchets in your hand, bro. That's not safe.
Yeah, that seems a little dangerous.
Yeah. So we were shocked by that. And apparently Cody's wife has been trying to tell him the whole time that, hey, you don't know ICP.
And literally the guy told us, he's like, I feel bad for your wife because she's probably been trying to tell you this, and it took me telling you.
It took me a good 5 minutes into that conversation to realize he wasn't trying to yank our chain.
Yeah.
I thought he was just messing with us.
No, he literally pulled out his phone and started Googling lyrics for us to read.
Yeah. Crazy. I had no idea.
It was awesome.
We met another person who is like close personal friends with the other pop culture pastor.
The one that gets more theological.
Yeah. So there's another podcast out there called Pop Culture Pastor. He goes way more into the theological stuff, but also with kind of springboards from pop culture like we do. And he knew him and said he's a cool guy and that we should totally do a collab.
Oh, snap.
So, yeah, if you're out there, if you hear this, other Pop Culture Pastor, we'd love to do a collab with you.
This is the multiverse of Pop Culture Pastor.
Yeah. I have here written Fortune Christian Etiquette. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
What was that note about?
So we are at our Airbnb.
Yes.
And your wife got...
she got P.F. Chang's.
She got P.F. Chang's. And there was a fortune cookie left out. And then we reviewed what is Christian fortune cookie etiquette.
Okay. Yeah, it's coming back to me now.
Okay, so I told you my senior pastor has said, Cody, you don't open that and read it because we are people of faith, and people of faith don't rely on luck or good wishes or fortune because you're worshiping something that is not even there, Cody.
Now, I'd like to ask your pastor, well, how am I supposed to get my lucky numbers? If I don't I would just like to play around with him because I don't care about the fortune cookie. I would just like to mess with him a little bit.
I've told him, I'm like, the cookie's not that good, but I don't want to be wasteful.
Yeah. Wow. We also, so that first night we went back to the place we were staying and we watched a documentary. What was the name of the documentary?
Okay, brace yourself. Poisoned, the dirty truth about your food on Netflix.
This was hard to watch. It was all about like food poisoning.
And throughout the documentary, there was a realization that came to be known.
Because you think they're going to go after meat.
Yeah.
They're all over meat at the beginning, but that's not where they're going.
Jabronis. Why would you think that?
Tell them, Cody.
It is all about the veggies.
The leafy greens, man. They said, don't do it. Don't eat the spinach. No problem.
Don't eat the lettuce. Haven't been doing it.
Cody has been living right for years.
Al Michaels, NFL commentator, and I are like, is that green? You get it out of here, buddy.
You get that off of my plate. Did that get washed? Did you put some of that, the stuff you put on your hands that everyone was using during COVID on that lettuce? Because you probably should have. Thought it smelled funny. That's wild. That documentary kind of scared me. That was crazy.
And they also lead you to believe that someone had died and then they didn't die.
Yeah.
But they do have long-term health complications.
I'm not eating leafy greens for a while. I know that. That scared me. Of course, we met some great people. We met a guy named Timothy McGowan. He's a indie fantasy author is the way he explains this. And he's a play tester for indie video games as well.
It's amazing.
No. Is that the same guy?
No,
this is a different guy.
That's a girl.
Oh, yeah. Okay. No, Timothy's not he's an indie fantasy author. He writes lit RPG. Do you know what that is?
Explain it.
It's short for a literary role-playing game. It's a literary genre combining the conventions of computer RPGs with science fiction and fantasy novels. He wrote something called Arcane Night. So you can look up that. It's not nighttime. It's like night, Knight. Arcane Night. This is his most popular piece of work. And we're talking to him. And he says, you know what's interesting about this, my most popular piece of work, is he set out to write using all the tropiest of the tropes.
All the tropes.
He said, so he's just like anyone else. He's written a lot of things. Some of it doesn't do as well as he hoped it would. But he said this one, it started off as a joke. He just wanted all the tropes. And he said something really interesting, that this became his most popular thing he's ever wrote.
We like what we like.
Oh, my goodness, Cody. This dude should get hired by Disney immediately.
I will say that the lit RPG sounds very cool.
Yeah, I'm really interested in that. I want to get his book and I want to read it. But what stood out for me from meeting Mr. Timothy McGowan was, it turns out we like the same stories.
We do.
We love that. We love the hero's journey. We love that story. There's something about that just appeals to us. So go check out Timothy McGowan. His last name is spelled McGowen. You can find Arcane Knight on Amazon, of course. You can follow him on Facebook, facebook.com/TimothyM.McGowan. So go look up our friend Tim. We also met another guy. His name is Christian Klopfer. I don't know if I'm saying that right, so I apologize, Christian, if I'm not saying your name right. He does comic strips.
Which is impressive.
Yeah, he does these comic strips. It's called Eating Crow Comics. He gets published in like the county newspaper of where he lives down there by Newton, Kansas.
Yes.
And you can find him on social media at Eating Crow Comics. So go look him up. But he had an amazing story. So for the last 25 years, he woke up one day and he just had it's called daily persistent migraines.
That sounds like death.
Like he just lives with migraine pain. It gives him tremors. He passes out occasionally. And he's telling us the story and he's like, the comic strips, and how they've saved his life and how he lives with this and it distracts him from pain. And then once he did this, once he started getting these strips published in his paper, that it becomes this whole other thing for him where he can share it with people. And I just thought this was amazing stuff. And he started drawing little cartoons when he was 3 years old.
Wow.
And he said that to me, and he said, yeah, comic strips saved my life. And it resonated with me because I would say comic books saved my life. And now I wasn't talented like Christian is in creating them. But when I was a kid and I was prone to depression and I had thoughts of harming myself, man, I just really got into comic books, Marvel comic books. Everywhere I went, when I would go to my grandma's or wherever, I would take this bag of comics with me, just everywhere I went. And I just got to thinking when I was talking to Christian and thinking about myself, I thought, man, that's why we're here. Because pop culture can be this thing for us. It can be this thing that keeps us afloat in stormy weather, you know?
Yes. And, I mean, it's amazing to see it on the micro scale at like these comic conventions and people that publish, and to see it on the macro scale with people like Pat that these things can provide a little light and a little hope and connect us to community and also maybe point us to the bigger light.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just wonderful meeting all these people, and special thanks to the two guys we mentioned there, Timothy McGowan and Christian Klopfer, who Eating Crow Comics. And you can get in contact with him. His email is eatingcrowcomics@gmail.com. If you want to, I'm sure there'd be a way if you follow him on social media, look him up. He had several books that he sold that compiled his comic strips. He was popular. I saw some people buying his books.
Yeah, so this comic convention didn't have like the celebrities that you want to go take pictures with. That wasn't a thing that you could purchase, but it had several people that were talented artists, had several people that were talented writers. And so everywhere you looked, you got to see these creative types. And I'm always fascinated by people that have that ability. You often point out we create because we tried to emulate the creator. And you get to see some of that Genesis energy when you're around these types of people.
Yeah. And so we just want to say thank you to and how much fun we had meeting with all the people we met at Air Capital Con this last week in Wichita. It was so wonderful to talk with people, to meet with people. And that's really what we want. That's really what we're about with this whole podcast. We only do this podcast as an excuse to go hang with our people.
We do. I mean, there were several people that we met. The person that was running the kid zone, she was the one that had been an indie video game tester. And I'm like, that's amazing.
Yeah, Sarah Pennick and Molly.
Yes. And they were fun to talk with. We carried on lengthy conversation with them. And I'm like, how does one even get to become a video game tester?
Yeah.
But she's living my dream.
She's living the dream. She's living the dream.
And the video game company that she tests for actually has a faith-based component to them. And
The Lost Legend of Redwall.
that's the game that she's has been testing. And they have a podcast.
Yeah, we're gonna have to check that out. So yeah, we met a bunch of great people. One day we'll meet you at a comic convention soon. We're about to hit the dead time of the year for comic conventions, but keep listening and we'll let you know where we're going next year. We're definitely going to Planet Comic Con again in Kansas City. That's in March. And so yeah, thank you to everyone we met. Thank you to Pat Fraley who came on, who joined us on the Geek Phone for this show. And thank you to all of you guys who listen. We love you guys so much. And it's so hard to sound sincere when saying that through a microphone, when I know you can't see my face, and know that I mean it. Cody means it. We love you guys. And we're so thankful to be able to do this and to be a part of your lives.
Love you all.
Yeah. So, go out and subscribe to the pod if you haven't, and give us a review. Let's help grow the community. You can help us grow this community and keep growing this community so we can make our community even bigger, and more of us can get together at comic conventions. That can become a regular thing. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Pop Culture Pastor.